What's up? Hello. It's a bright and cold, very chilly Sunday morning here at the Toronto International Film Festival. My name is Matt, and I'm continuing Fantasy Filmball's coverage of the festival and all of the movies in it. I am currently on my way to the Press and Industry screening of Nightbitch. So it's 15 minutes before. It's in the biggest theater at Scotiabank. I'm making a gamble. I decided to sleep a little bit extra. We'll see. I think I should get in. It's not a small theater, so fingers crossed. Alright, I just finished Nightbitch and I just ran into the next theater because Conclave is coming up and I did not want it to fill up. So I'm just gonna record my little bit on Nightbitch in here. Nightbitch is the new Marielle Heller film. Very talented writer-director, known for Can You Ever Forgive Me, as well as A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Diary of a Teenage Girl. Nightbitch is her latest film starring Amy Adams as the mother of a toddler who begins to believe that she is transforming into a dog. She's extremely frustrated with how much of her life she's had to give up to care for her child and has started hallucinating and dreaming about being a dog, as well as noticing strange changes happening with her body. This was one that for a while people were predicting and hyping up Amy Adams as a potential Oscar winner until the trailer came out and everyone went much lower on the film, as the trailer painted it as much more of a goofy comedy about motherhood than it was the dark comedy body horror that people expected. But honestly, I think this is more of the film that people expected than what the trailer let on to. Yes, there are all of those sort of wine mom elements to it, but it also doesn't shy away from the body horror elements either. There's some real gross sequences in this. I liked that balance between the two. In effect, the film really feels like if Jean Dielman had a Live, Laugh, Love sign on her wall. It's a film about the frustrations of motherhood, the duality of loving your child and also feeling the frustration of how much you had to sacrifice to care for that child. These themes have been talked about in films like The Lost Daughter recently, and so while Nightbitch isn't treading any new territory, it's definitely doing it in a new way. That said, I did find some of the monologues throughout to be quite on the nose. I had heard reports that the book was very interior, focused on inner monologue, and that was translated into the film through a lot of moments where Amy Adams will say exactly what she's feeling, exactly what she's thinking, and then it'll snap back to reality, and it turns out that she didn't actually say that thing at all. It wasn't a very creative way to get to those interior thoughts, and it really made it so that right from the first scene, you knew that this is the type of movie that doesn't hide anything from you. It doesn't hold its cards close to its chest at all. It's just going to tell you exactly what it's thinking, exactly what it's feeling at all times. When the first scene is Amy Adams just directly saying exactly what the themes are and how much this baby is driving her crazy, you know you're not in for a subtle time. But there's still a lot of fun to be had. Amy Adams is quite good, although the writing doesn't often serve her the best. But overall, I think this is a film that's going to really click with its target audience. Women who are mothers are really going to connect with what this movie is saying and how it's saying it. This is the type of brave, bold filmmaking that I don't feel is often targeted to middle-aged and above women. So while the movie wasn't entirely for me, I do think this is really going to connect with the people that it was made for. Anyways though, I am already here in my next screening. I get to see Conclave, one of my most anticipated of the year, so I'm gonna get some editing done, I'm gonna eat lunch, and then I'm gonna watch Conclave. So that line is not for any movie. That is the longest line at TIFF right now, and it is for Ferrero Rocher chocolate. It's been this crazy of a line all weekend long. Anyways, I just saw Conclave, the new film from Edward Berger. It tells the story of the death of a pope leading to the papal conclave, where all of the cardinals come together to elect a new pope. Ralph Fiennes plays Cardinal Lawrence, who is tasked with leading the conclave. He takes it upon himself to make sure that the person who is elected for pope is the best person for the job, and so he begins to uncover scandals, unravel all of these different clues left behind by the deceased pope. The film debates with a lot of things that are brought up constantly, including voting between the lesser of two evils. Should that be a choice that people have to make? Should they vote with their hearts for the ideal candidate, or should they mitigate risk? Ultimately, the film kind of ends up leaning in the favor of vote with your heart, vote for the right person. Don't just vote for the best person that could win, vote for the person that holds true to what you believe. And while it looked like for a while this was going to really take the form of a political thriller, it honestly more feels like an Agatha Christie mystery, where instead of uncovering a murder, it's about uncovering scandal. And in this case, anyone could be a culprit. Everyone has skeletons in their closet. And the delight of Conclave comes from figuring out what those skeletons are. The music is fantastic. The production design is really well done, replicating Vatican City. The actors are probably the big highlight. They are the showcase. Ralph Fiennes delivers what some people are calling career-defining work. I think it's a bit too subtle for that. It's a little bit too small. He doesn't really have any huge moments. He's just consistently very strong and shows a lot of nuance in his consideration of the task that he's been given to carry out. As for the supporting cast, my standout has to be Carlos Diaz, who has an incredible monologue. Like this one a lot. That said, definitely did not love it as much as I loved All Quiet on the Western Front. This one doesn't feel as ambitious, as huge. It's just a solid thriller with some fun comedic mystery elements to it. Definitely highly recommend this one, but it didn't floor me the way that I hoped it would. Anyways, I'm just in the rush line for Relay right now. Not a bad rush line whatsoever. I am just back like probably about 60 people. It's really not a terrible thing. I'm gonna get in for sure. Feel very confident in it, and I got here 90 minutes before. All right, rush succeeded. All right.
Backtracks on both sides.
Got it. Ready to go.
So we're really pleased that we have an opportunity to have some...
So I just got out of Relay, David Mackenzie's new film, the director of Hell or High Water, as well as The King. Relay is a political thriller starring Riz Ahmed, who plays a fixer, a man whose job it is to protect whistleblowers. He secures deals between potential whistleblowers and corrupt corporations to ensure that they get paid off and they are safe and protected for the rest of their life. But he finds himself in new territory when a scientist who uncovered dangerous details about a new strain of wheat comes to him for help. It's a twisty, turny political thriller, and the thing that most surprised me about this is Riz Ahmed does not say a single word for the first 30 minutes. He silently walks from place to place. He sends text messages. Most of the film follows Lily James' character, who is the scientist running away from a corporation that wants her dead. And the plot is really satisfying in how it unravels this mystery and this sort of cat and mouse thriller between the hired guns of the company and the fixer played by Riz Ahmed. Everyone's trying to get a few steps ahead of everyone else, and it's really interesting to see how all of that plays out. In the meantime, there's also some stuff going on about Riz Ahmed's character's struggle with alcoholism, which informs sort of the background of this person, their addiction to adrenaline. I will say that a lot of this character work behind the main plot didn't quite work as well for me. Additionally, there is a twist that comes in very late into the film. I will not spoil at all what it is, but I'll say that it hit me pretty early. That said, it's a bit of a nonsensical twist. If you were to watch the film back, a lot of the actions of the characters don't entirely make sense under the premise of there being this twist. Specifically, a lot of the things that the antagonists of the story do and say, I feel like would not be done because of this twist. And so it's one of those things where a cool surprise ends up screwing with everything that came before because it just riddles it. It pokes holes all over everything. Still, it's a well-made film with a very strong performance from Riz Ahmed, and while it might have just as many holes as like Now You See Me, for example, this is still definitely worth checking out if you like the actors and if you like the genre of political thrillers. Just got a mac patty, Jamaican patty with macaroni and cheese. Now I'm gonna go head into a Jean-Luc Godard film. I am just out of Wavelengths 3, which was a collection of 3 short films, 2 of which by the master of the French New Wave, Jean-Luc Godard, and the final film being from British filmmaker John Smith, who I had never heard of till today, and now I am desperate to see more of his films. Now, I haven't done one of these short packages before, so this is gonna be a little different. I'm gonna go kind of one by one, quickly going over the filmmaker and what this film is. So the first film in the package was Jean-Luc Godard's Scenarios, the final film by Jean-Luc Godard, who passed away a few years ago now, and his notes are being used to put together his final films, basically going by the endless scraps of paper around his place and putting them together into the project that he never made. So Scenarios is a 17-minute long short film, which would be complete nonsense if you didn't have some familiarity with late-stage Godard. It's a collection of strange sounds and images, usually still photos, occasionally photos with no sound at all. More than an experimental film, late-stage Godard can often be described just as images and sound, seeing how those come together in unexpected ways. It's strange, it's abrasive. Ultimately, a lot of it feels very cryptic. I had no idea what much of this film was saying. Its meaning is ultimately up to you. I didn't find much in this at all, outside of the chapter that he labels MRI/Odyssey, in which he overlays the sound of an MRI scan with images of old films. And in that way, I was almost hearing the audio as an analogy for his decline and his health, him acknowledging the end of his life, while the Odyssey part of it being his life through cinema, being these images showing his journey, his travels through the world. Of course, I have no way of knowing if that's actually what he meant by this, because it is a total death of the author situation with Godard. You just have to let it go, understand that it probably means nothing, but you can find whatever meaning you want to in it. The next short film in the collection was Exposé du film annonce du film Scenario, which is a making of film of Scenario. Unlike Scenario, this one is actually pretty coherent. It is one shot, one take of Jean-Luc Godard sitting down at his desk, flipping through pages of a scrapbook, explaining the film that he plans to make to his collaborators, presumably so that when he passes away, they can continue his work and assemble the film for him in the cutting room. He explains every image, he explains every moment in the film Scenarios. Weirdly enough, though, not a single moment, not a single image, not a single sound that he describes actually ends up in the film Scenarios. So it's very odd watching a film that's called Exposé du film Scenario that has nothing to do with the film that we just watched. However, the real joy of this film, which is one of my favorites of the festival, is watching Jean-Luc Godard work, watching how his brain processes things. It's an interesting look into the mind of someone who could just be a complete nutcase, who could be completely senile. The scrapbook looks more like that scene in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Charlie is talking about Pepe Sylvia. It looks like someone who has lost their mind, not someone who's a generational artist. But that's what's so fascinating about this film. It gives us a look into the process of someone who has been forever a master of cinema. And the questions brought to mind for me were, has he always been like this? Is this just his way of making films? Or has he truly gone senile? Either way, it doesn't matter, because Jean-Luc Godard has always been a mystery. He's simultaneously a genius and a lunatic, a fraud and the real deal. It is such a rare pleasure to see into the mind of someone so singular and unique as Jean-Luc Godard, and I loved every minute of this film. And the final film in the package was Being John Smith. This was one that a lot of people left the theater for after the Godard films finished. They missed out. This was the delight of the package, the surprise of the evening for me. John Smith is an experimental filmmaker from the UK. He's been working since the 1970s, and his work is primarily screened in galleries. And this is an autobiographical piece. It tells the story of his life. He recounts his childhood. He recounts being picked on for his name. And he speaks a lot about how his name has shaped his identity. And simultaneously, he's also overlaying captions over images to give us an alternate narrative. It's filled with a dry wit, a real biting sense of humor, which had the entire audience laughing riotously. In fact, after the film, the filmmaker himself actually said, "I wonder if I made it too funny. I didn't expect you to laugh that hard." It's an autobiography that questions the purpose of artist autobiographies. He speaks in the film about not liking how artist autobiographies often feel unearned or self-aggrandizing. And yet he's making his own here. And he uses this as a way to almost comment on the way that artists nowadays are so focused on putting together consider a legacy when he believes that the world may not live long enough to have a legacy to leave behind anyways. Blown away by this experimental short film.
Everything, she starts to take control.
And we have to trust each other a lot.
Yeah.
And I think
Now, I may not have done Midnight Madness like all of them over there, but I did see some pre-Midnight Madness because I just got out of Heretic. This is a film starring Hugh Grant, as well as Chloe East and Sophie Thatcher, and it tells the story of two Mormon missionaries who arrive at a man's house and are trapped inside mysteriously. What does he want? Well, it's a horror movie. You can probably guess what's going to happen here. The interesting thing about Heretic is how it turns a simple conversation into a horror movie. It's a chamber piece. The majority of this film could be turned into an incredibly effective stage play, and it would work just as well. That said, nothing in this would work half as well without the majesty of Hugh Grant, who spends the majority of the movie giving long monologues, waxing poetic about religion, about faith, about what is true, what is not true, and the way that belief can be used to control people. And speaking of beliefs, I believe that Hugh Grant's performance in this is the best horror villain performance since Kathy Bates in Misery. He is magnetic, wielding his charisma and his sort of suave, posh British accent that makes him sound so intelligent and persuasive. It makes him an incredibly compelling villain, where even when you know he has the worst intentions in mind, you kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt. He just seems so nice, and it makes you doubt everything that you see with your eyes. In a film about belief, in a film about faith, making you doubt your own senses is a powerful thing. Hugh Grant makes this movie exceptional. He brings the entertainment level up, and he chews on the dialogue, which is already very strong work. Now, when the film gets into the more conventional horror territory, about halfway through, it does lose a bit of the charm, a bit of the magic, but even when it does lose a bit of its initial charm, it's still a lot of fun. It becomes very much like an escape room film, where you're just wondering how the characters can get out, what the next piece of the puzzle is going to be that's going to come together. This is a movie of puzzles, of games. In many ways, this is the movie that I thought something like Ready or Not would be, where every scene brings a new piece of the puzzle, a new rule of the game kicks into place. And for that, I enjoyed the hell out of this one. I thought this was one of the most fun films that I've seen at the festival so far. And with that Hugh Grant performance, it elevates it to something really, really, really special. Anyways, that is it for me for today. Again, you can hear my voice has been worn down over this past few days. I'm tired out. It's midnight. I am heading home. And as always, thank you so much for watching. My name's Matt. This has been Fantasy Filmball, and I will see you back at TIFF tomorrow.